The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the host of webinar. My name is Karen Mann, and I have my team with us, Siddhita, co-chair webinar. And we have our speaker today, Erin Urban. We represent the Human Development and Leadership Division of the American Society for Quality. This is a global division aiming to enrich the personal and professional lives of our members and non-members, the global community, to trump over current and future challenges. We continuously look for new speakers within the range of our body of knowledge, which can be found in our website. We host many webinars. If you are interested or know someone interested, we would be happy to review their application. The Book of Knowledge can be found on our website, www.asqhdnl.org. The link is shared on our chat as well. Before we begin the webinar, let me go over the housekeeping and some webinar rules. If there is any question, please type under questions section and we will be happy to answer the questions. Webinar will be held for 45 minutes and then QA in 15 minutes. If you want continue education credits, 0.1 CEU, you have to be on the webinar for at least 40 minutes. You will receive an email from us, which you can save as PDF and send to ASQ to claim credits. Now, let me introduce you to our speaker, Erin Urban. She's a certified professional and a leadership development coach with almost a decade in mentoring and coaching successfully professionally transformation. Erin is a certified facilitator, trainer, speaker, and a published author with an extensive background in leading individual, cultural, and organizational change initiatives. Her mission is to lift others up to defy their limits and exceed their goals. Erin is a Forbes contributor and serves on the board of Houston Lean Six Sigma Professionals, a nonprofit organization with the mission of encouraging knowledge sharing and networking opportunities to continuously improve professionals throughout the Houston, Texas area. Erin has also served on the board of APICS Houston chapter and an active member of both PMI Houston and ASQ Houston. Now, let me hand over to the speaker. Erin, all for you.
Karen, thank you for such an excellent introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, I am excited to share with you how to find the joy of creative thinking, avoid the pitfalls of the groupthink ideal, and successfully build an environment that supports diversity as well as innovation in a hectic corporate climate. Now, as you may well know, developing an environment of innovation and fostering a culture of creativity is a desirable journey in the world of business. Perhaps you would like to encourage a continuous improvement mindset. Maybe you're faced with a challenge to launch a strategic initiative, develop new products, or find unique methods to attract and retain clients. Whatever your goal, harnessing the power of creativity in a corporate culture is both rewarding and terrifying. As David Hill says, the single biggest variable of whether employees will be creative is whether they perceive they have permission. So what are we fighting when we're talking about creating an innovative environment? Well, we're challenging the status quo. Gravity is a powerful force, and if you are not prepared for its pull, you and your organization may find yourself smack in the middle of status quo. The mindset you will be fighting to develop an environment of innovation is business as usual. Status quo is often paired with popular thinking. We are social creatures that long to be a part of a community. Most communities are governed by some degree of popular thinking models designed to keep status quo. Popular thinking resists change and dampens innovation. People may stick with status quo because it's the path of least resistance. Others fear rejection. Or perhaps they're attached to just doing things the way we've always done them. Regardless of what holds you or your organization back, you must reject common thinking to achieve uncommon results. One of the reasons change agents find it incredibly hard to establish an innovative environment, they are bucking company tradition and habitual processes. People don't like change. However, if you want to encourage creativity, you must create a safe environment for people to try new things. Develop a deep appreciation for how other people think. Popular thinking is comfortable, but it's not how you or your organization can stay competitive. If you want to embrace achievement, you'll need to embrace being uncomfortable. And this is true both professionally and personally. I'll share with you a quick personal story. About 6 months ago, I was in the middle of a 100-mile gravel cycling race. As a competitive cyclist, this is a big deal. As you can imagine, I was very uncomfortable. Rewind 1-2 years previously, I would have not ever even signed up for such an event, such a giant undertaking. I wouldn't have even considered going there because I was firmly planted in status quo. For me, I had to challenge my own popular thinking, which was a fear of failure. I didn't even accept the possibility that I could achieve something so significant. However, through this journey, I understood in order to innovate myself athletically, I need to push past the fear of failure and embrace the possibility that I could achieve. And achieve, I did. I finished that 100-mile gravel race because I was open to possibilities. What are some of the characteristics of creative thinking? One of the number one misunderstandings about creative thinking is that it's original thinking. Innovation isn't always new and radical ideas. In actuality, innovation is often just a fresh look at a current state. It's asking yourself, how can we do this better? Here are some of the common characteristics of creative thinkers. Number one, creative thinkers value ideas. Creativity is about having lots of ideas, regardless of sort or even feasibility. Diversity is not just skin deep. Embrace intellectual diversity. Number two, creative thinkers explore options. Exploring possibilities stimulates the imagination, and imagination is crucial to creativity. Place a high value on options because they provide the keys to the best answer, not just the only answer. Number three, celebrate the unusual. Yale University Kingman Brewster said, "There's a correlation between the creative and the screwball. We must suffer the screwball gladly." Those people that stand out in your organization, maybe think a little differently, embrace them and bring them into your innovative initiatives. Number four, connect ideas. Creative people connect ideas because often the most breakthrough ideas are just a collection or a chain of ideas, some seemingly unrelated. And lastly, but most importantly, don't fear failure. Creativity embraces failure. Innovators just don't let the ideas that don't work stop them from coming up with and trying ideas that do work. Creativity can increase your capacity and revolutionize your business. Innovations often compounds if given the right environment to flourish. When you develop an environment of innovation, you will also foster a culture that comes up with more solutions than problems, which is always a good thing. But what about some of those creativity killers? I bet you've heard a few of these. Don't follow that crazy idea, just follow the rules. Can't rock the boat, don't ask those questions. Be practical, that's not logical. It's too much work. That's not done here. After all, we need to do it just the way we've always done it. We don't have the time or the money. We've tried that before. Don't be foolish. We can't afraid to fail. Yeah, but we've all heard them, and they can be serious creativity killers. So far, we've heard about some of the potential roadblocks a change agent might face when fostering a creative culture. But what are the steps to successfully developing an environment of innovation? First, let's hear what you have to say about the best way to brainstorm new and innovative ideas. We have a poll. We'd like you to engage. When brainstorming for ideas, you are most likely to so go ahead and answer there. Go ahead and answer. Which one are you most likely to do when brainstorming for new ideas? Are you A, likely to meet with a group and facilitate an open discussion? Or B, do you meet with individuals one-on-one and gather ideas individually? Or C, ask for ideas to be submitted anonymously, like a Dropbox or something similar, maybe sticky notes. So which one do you most likely go to when brainstorming for new ideas? I'll give you a few moments to answer that.
We're ready to close. Okay, we're sharing the results. You have 58% on option A, meet with a group and facilitate a discussion, and 37% on option B, meet with individuals on one-on-one to gather ideas, and 5% on option C, ask for ideas to be submitted anonymously.
Thank you, Sarita. You know what? That is not exactly surprising with those results, because I'll share with you that the number one thing that we always go to is collaboration when it comes to finding creative ideas. However, in corporate America, that's not always the best idea. Brainstorming through collaboration is one of the very first tools we most often go to when we try to think of creativity. But brainstorming was introduced by the eager world of business in 1953 by the legendary advertising executive Alex Osborne. He had a revolutionary new book, Applied Imagination, and he believed passionately that groups could potentially develop higher quantity and quality of ideas than an individual alone. However, sadly, Osborne was catastrophically wrong. While Osborne was busy convincing the world that we were destined to think better together, a concept, quite frankly, I believed for years. Scientists were finding that collaboration actually does not work well to develop innovative ideas. Brainstorming in groups works well to build trust and establish yourself within a social matrix and harness the synergy of a team to get innovative or initiatives to hold traction within a corporate culture. However, studies have shown that unique idea generation suffers in group settings, particularly as the group size increases. This confusing outcome is primarily due to three factors. Number one, social loafers. In any group, some individuals will just go along with the status quo and let others do all the challenging work. You know, those folks that sit in the back of the room, probably playing with their smartphone, and typically what they'll say is, oh, whatever everybody else wants to do sounds great to me. They're not really participating. Number 2, with collaboration hijackers, is production blocking. After all, only one person can speak at a time. So only one idea is proposed at a time while others may listen. Often the most prolific speakers are not necessarily the ones with the best ideas, but those who are more reluctant to share their ideas, they may be great ideas, but oftentimes they're not even heard. Number 3 for collaboration hijackers is evaluation apprehension. This springs from the fear of being judged by others and has often stifled good ideas because we would rather fit in than raise any eyebrows. And I'll share with you too that evaluation apprehension, or the fear of being judged by others, is also one of the number 1 fears when it comes to public speaking. At first, I was shocked to realize that the groupthink ideal wasn't the best idol for the corporate world to worship. I mean, I've been using collaboration for most of my facilitative career. This came as a huge shock to me. Then I realized the obvious. Almost 100% of my most innovative moments happen when I'm alone. Albert Einstein, Isaac Newton, James Clerk Maxwell, 3 of the greatest collaborative contributors to the world of physics, worked almost entirely alone. I'm no Einstein, but I recognize that some of the most innovation comes to a mind free of distraction. Well, this is almost kind of frustrating, really. How can we harness the synergy of a team if we're most productive with creating unique ideas alone? Is there a way to leverage the creative need to focus in a solitary state while still harnessing that energy of a team? Collaboration enables powerful work to be done effectively. And there is a vital energy and synergy when you work in a team. However, it may not be the best method to harness innovative ideas. Here are some ways to harness the creative soul of innovation and the energy of teamwork. First, fly solo. Touch base with your key subject matter experts. Propose a challenge and allow those experts and those engaged professionals to brainstorm in private. Ideas can then be shared with the team anonymously. There's also plenty of free online software offerings that can manage this for you. Or you can go the old-fashioned way and use a Dropbox method or sticky notes on an idea wall. I recommend interviewing individuals as well. When I propose and lead process improvement work, often I interview individuals one-on-one. I find that people speak more freely without the fear of judgment by their peers. Individuals are also more open to sharing ideas and asking questions. When you vote anonymously, you remove the evaluation apprehension. You can have the team's brainstorming ideas voted without knowing who contributed to suggestions, so it's easier for people to share their ideas. It's also extremely important to keep the team small. I found that more than 3 to 4 people on a team can become very cumbersome. Have you ever heard of death by committee? More than 3 or 4 people is about all it takes to make a significant leap forward in innovation and implementations. Make sure you include subject matter experts or engaged employees. Those people who are what we call anchor draggers, or folks who are not interested in making changes within your culture, are probably not going to add much value to you. However, If you find that you have an absolute need to include people who are more reluctant to step outside of their comfort zone and become engaged and being a little uncomfortable, meet with them up front. Get them engaged early on in the process so you have time to work with them to help them overcome their fears. Find a plan to minimize spotlight hogging. Oftentimes in teams, even small teams, only one person will speak, and they'll probably often speak for the other team members. There'll always be someone who's probably less open to speaking in front of other people. So it's wise to come up with a process to ensure that everybody participates. Very important here, celebrating individual talent. This is another issue I often find with teams. We overlook one person's significant contributions in order to avoid offending the other players. In reality, yes, one or two people usually perform the lion's share of the work. So acknowledging and supporting individual contributions are just as important as working together as a team. Create accountability. This is very important. Most of you probably already aware that a great way to create accountability, particularly for action items, is to address these before the meeting ends. Because I know it's very, very tempting to just wait until those meeting minutes are issued, and then maybe we'll follow up with some people and try to see who wants to work on them. But I encourage everyone to create accountability in the meeting before it ends. Review the key action items and the next steps. Ask for volunteers. And a top tip that's worked like a charm for me for years, sticky notes. Little sticky notes are perfect. Write the accountability item or the action item, and then ask for someone to take on the action item. It's a physical representation of that accountability, and it works extremely well. I even did this with a CFO, and buddy, even though he didn't need to get that done for another 3 weeks, he had it done in 3 days. It's that physical representation that makes a difference. And pilot ideas with a fail-forward perspective. In corporate culture, failing is a bad word. However, if we test in a small beta group, there's less fear of something going wrong. And things usually don't go quite the way we would like them to when we're testing out new ways to do things. So make sure we pilot with a small group or small beta, something like that, so we can try it, see how it goes, circle back, and improve. After all, it's a continuous process. So make sure you pilot ideas, understanding that things may not always go the way you want them to, or think they might or should. And most importantly, we learn from those opportunities. So how do we create an environment of innovation? Well, I'd like to share with you some key characteristics of an innovative environment. Innovative environment encourages creativity. When innovation, all aspects of innovation, are openly encouraged, creativity will flourish. So what does that look like? Well, remember those key buzzwords that would kill creativity? We want to eliminate those from our conversations. Because if we continue to vocalize that type of negativity against innovation, it's less likely someone's going to feel like this is a safe environment for me to actually have an idea. Thank people when they have an idea. Even if it's a crazy one, make sure you thank that person. It takes a lot of courage to step forward or speak up and offer your idea, even if it's not feasible. So make sure you thank those people. Place a high value on trust. Innovation and trying new things always risk failure. This is one reason why it's so important to trust your creatives. Creating a safe environment to try and fail is one of the most significant contributions to an innovative environment. Pilot new ideas, like we mentioned before, instead of worrying them to death. And what if? A creative environment places a high value on individuality. As we said before, diversity is not just skin deep. Embrace intellectual diversity. Embrace being different. Being offbeat takes courage. Allow people to be authentically themselves. Another characteristic is that an environment of innovation focuses on innovation, not invention. In other words, you can successfully use your imagination to develop innovative applications. But innovation is not necessarily completely new concepts. It's often about seeing something that already exists in just a new light. Another characteristic of an innovative environment is it allows you to color outside the lines. Challenge your boundaries. Many of the limitations we face, we have placed on ourselves. Just like I had to color outside the lines and allow myself to be open to possibilities when I was in the middle of a 100-mile gravel cycling race. Really had to stretch myself. Sometimes we need to stretch ourselves and be okay. In other words, be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Success is not necessarily a comfortable journey. It's not the warm and familiar. Oftentimes, it's stepping outside of that comfort zone. So don't be afraid to color outside the lines. It may not be popular thinking, as innovative thinking that matters. An innovative environment also appreciates the power of a dream. Dr. Martin Luther King did not declare, "I have a goal." He had a dream. Harness the power of emotion and the passion that comes with following a dream. I'll share with you that most human decision-making is not actually sourced in our Homo sapien or logic brain. That is actually sourced in our limbic brain, or some people call it their lizard brain. When you attach innovation and harness the power of emotion, you are more likely to have people excited and engaged to create that culture of innovation. Before we get to questions, I'd like to share with you that creating a culture encourages intellectual diversity, a continuous improvement mindset, and a fail-forward attitude that can be challenging but deeply rewarding for an organization. If your company wants to stay in front of your competition, it is critical to embrace an environment of innovation and all of its adventurous mindset with a platform that supports employee empowerment. Now we have a few extra minutes here for questions, which is great. I'm really excited. What questions do we have? Go ahead and take a few moments to type them in.
We will now open to questions, and I invite everyone who's attending to use the chat. We'll take them as they come, and thanks, Erin, so much for the presentation itself. I know it goes and touches a little bit of many items over there, and personally, I am curious to know a bit more on. I guess it depends on from person to person how we are and what we get from here. But personally, I would like to know a bit more on how do you create from down to upwards kind of thing. So if we're working and the culture is not there, then unless you're a manager, you want to manage your team that way, that might work. But then if you have people above you not okay with it, like what's your experience or what inputs do you have on that regard?
That's a very good question. So if I get the gist of your question correctly, we're talking about engaging our leaders to be excited and open to an innovative culture where historically they may not be exhibiting those signs of being open for a creative culture. Is that correct?
Yes, like the concept of leadership in general, even in studies and stuff, it's kind of always talking about the leader. They don't talk much about the follower and how the follower can lead the leader. So that's exactly what I meant.
Now, coaching up is a skill that does take time. One of the tricks I'd like to share with you, if you want to call it a trick, it's a extremely good technique. Because our leaders, and particularly our executives, are focused on, obviously, the return on investment, or ROI, it's important to understand what the potential ROI of thinking creativity or following an innovative initiative might bring to the organization. So one of the first things I encourage a change agent to do is get time in front of these executives and these leaders to help coach them through understanding the ROI first, and then some of high level, don't go into a lot of detail because you'll lose them, okay, high level, what is involved in the process. So things that they would not normally be open to are key items that you want to hit first. So ROI first, and then what are some of the items that they may have been historically not as thrilled about, but we want to go ahead and address them and get their buy-in up front.
We do have a couple of more questions. So we have Nancy saying, what specific things, you covered a little bit of this as well during the presentation, what specific things can individuals in the C-suite do to encourage innovation? And you're kind of now talking both ways, upwards and downwards.
Okay, so if I understand Nancy's question correctly, we are thinking about how individuals can come alongside a change agent to assist in the innovation process. One of the ways I would say, is that correct?
Yeah, she wants to know something specific that an individual in the C-suite can do to encourage innovation.
Okay. One is having a conversation and having that conversation openly. One of the biggest key points that we hit upon during this particular webinar is the fear of failure. That is probably one of the largest roadblocks that you'll run across as a change agent when it comes to thinking creativity or quote unquote outside the box, innovatively, and that sort of thing. So the fear of failure is very common, whether that's personal or professionally, particularly in corporations, because they don't want, obviously, something to go wrong. So it's understanding first that failure is a process to success. There isn't success without failure along the road. It is a process that we must go through. And in fact, we have our biggest successes oftentimes directly after some of our biggest failures. The key is to minimize the impact of that failure and making it a safe environment, an environment where ideas aren't shut down right out the gate. So we don't hear some of those buzzwords that, oh, we don't have the time, or we don't have the money, or we've tried that before, or that didn't work the last time, or that's just silly. Those types of comments shut people down quickly. So we want to eliminate that from the vocabulary and help people understand that all ideas are welcome. They may not be feasible right now all the time, okay? But we also want to make sure that that communication line is very open and that we are following up. So another mistake that often happens is when people do submit ideas, particularly in the Dropbox scenario, it goes into a black hole. No one ever follows up. That is a good way to stop an innovative and engaged environment immediately, okay? You always want to have that process by which you follow up robustly with individuals that share ideas. whether that idea is going to be utilized or not. They need to know either way and why. Okay? So I hope that helps, Nancy.
I think it does, because like personally, my experience here, I work for FedEx, quite big company, and we do go through these things, and we do go through, as I mentioned before, the upwards and downwards. It does happen where you find the environment where people are welcoming about ideas, and as you mentioned, what do you do about those? Not just like express them, but that they have a final goal and is aligned. Of course, they have to be aligned to the overall strategy. We can't just get ideas that are flying all over. And my personal experience, when you mentioned have a conversation, sometimes it works, sometimes it might not work, because as you mentioned, they want to see what's the outcome of it. And something that worked with me, even though I was the outlier all the time, I stopped trying to convince people. I continued to use my ideas, but put them to work, so the work itself would show the results, and then they would be kind of, oh, so how did you do this? Or let's put you into this other project. I think the work itself indirectly influenced the culture, which takes such a long time as well. We have another question. We have another question from Guru saying goals, in his opinion, drive human behavior. I wouldn't quite agree with that personally, but what would drive dreams at the workplace? Which, of course, it's so hard to keep your dream in the workplace going.
That's
to
actually,
do what you really love.
Yeah, that's a great question. And in honesty, I think what he's talking about when goals drive behavior, they do. What leaders exhibit as importance, okay? So they might be delivered in the form of a goal, and those can be unspoken or spoken, okay? Leaders must model the behavior they expect to see in their team. That's fact. Whatever that behavior is, if it's spoken or unspoken, and we all have had that manager, can't call him a leader, but a manager who has said one thing and done expressively something else. Do we take that person seriously? And what do we then think their expectation is? It's probably what they're doing, not what they're saying. So in a way, what he's speaking of, when goals drive behavior, that is actually quite true. What we demonstrate as the goal, if you will, does drive behavior and leadership. Now, the second part of that, how can you keep your dream alive? That's a good one, particularly if you are in an environment that is not conducive to creative thinking. Right. That's a tough one. That is a real tough one. So you touched on it, though, Savita, when you were talking earlier. One way to start to slowly change a culture, and all change does not happen, obviously, overnight. Some do, but very rarely. Okay, change takes time. It takes people to understand first credibility, then trust the process, and then understand the ROI and see it for themselves. So one great way to keep that dream alive is to pilot an idea in a small way, whether that's personally with you, a couple other people, small group. That's why I mentioned small groups work wonders, because in actuality, it's only one or two people that do all the work anyway. So why not leverage that small group to pilot an idea? And then you prove to the rest of the organization that, yes, this does work, and it does have a positive ROI. And communicate that. Don't be afraid to share. When you have a win, when you have something that works and you work through it in an innovative way and thought outside the box and redid a process or whatever that looks like, share it with other people so they can get excited too. When we say creativity compounds, it does, but we have to share it.
That's some great input out there, Erin, as usual. From you. We do have many people, and I go through that and I shake my head. I'm like, why don't you just consider your work as it's part of your life? You spend more than 8 hours, and that is our life. Like, we can't just be so depressive in the workplace. And I would have responses where people say, well, I'm not paid enough, and then I go deep down to understand where is it coming from. And you can tell, like even the desk level job that they're doing, entering data, for example, you have people who are into coordinating, or give them something that excites their personality, like something that connects so they can feel committed to the task that they're doing. Because some people do want to be left alone and just enter data, but some people might like that aspect, to take the calls from the customer, or someone to see the aspect of how this is going to impact the customer itself. So I think the understanding of the individuals, as you mentioned at the very beginning, let's see what each individual and what works for each individual and what each individual can bring to the table. We have a couple more actually, so I need to speed up my comments in here. I get too excited about leadership. We do have Jason saying, what is the best process that can be implemented to minimize the spotlight hogging?
Spotlight hogging. Yes. Well, I'll tell you what, there's a couple of processes, and one, it boils down to communication up front. So we have to set clear expectations when we're in the team environment. And one of the, if you will, setting the stage whenever I do a facilitation is to explain that participation is encouraged and we will be going around the room. So there's a time limit on everybody's idea, like sharing, if you will. And once a person, as a facilitator, I keep track of whatever that time limit we agree upon, because obviously people don't want to be in meetings all day. We want to make sure that ideas are shared in a timely fashion and that everybody has an opportunity to contribute. Okay, so as a facilitator, it's very important to keep time and then understand, okay, thank you. There's another process called when they knock on a table, they knock on a table when it's a polite way of saying, please sit down now. Your time's done. Those are processes. But again, it depends upon the group. And what I encourage you to do as a facilitator is to ask the group how they would like to set that limit on sharing time, or when somebody should be speaking and when they should be listening. Let the group set the parameters. When you allow the group to set their own rules, they're more likely to, one, accept them, and two, abide by them.
Exactly. Inclusion comes back over and over. Have you heard, and what do you think about there is a model out there, I don't remember the name, where each person, I think they separate teams, as you mentioned, four people, each person has to write down 3 ideas, and then the person next to it has to add another 3 ideas on top of those. So build ideas upon ideas. It's still a collective way. At the same time, it is individual, but it is known to kind of produce more ideas at the end of the day.
Yes, that isn't a good idea. There is one variation I do encourage. Instead of handing, say, okay, we have 3 or 4 people around a table, everybody write 3 ideas and pass them to the left or to the right. Instead of doing that, I recommend everybody put it up on a wall. And then people go up and choose what idea that speaks to them, because oftentimes when someone sees something, then it will spark a thought. It will make a click. So when we mentioned earlier during the presentation that oftentimes innovation is a chain of ideas linked to one another, this is very true. So oftentimes what happens is we use that methodology, then the person, another individual, can take that idea and then they can compound upon that idea or expound it or use their expertise or something that worked, right? So that's a great way to do that too.
And I think also there is the lean thinking, like you mentioned before, continuous improvement, the Lean Enterprise Institute that talks about this continuous openness to better ways to do things. It's not just a one-time thing or a process improvement person who has to do that or a one-time project. This is the way we work. So the work itself becomes, the mindset becomes work. So that's the task. It's like always looking for how can I get this done better, and what new ideas do we have as a team? I think when that's built, which is hard to do, but maybe companies who are nowadays designed from DNA startup, that way would be easier for them. Is there any research out there? I had Stephen asking any publications that you would recommend reading more about this, which is kind of building the mindset more than when we send out the idea about this webinar. I didn't want people to feel like, oh, it's innovation in this company. We don't do innovation, you know, we're just a service company, or they think like it's this technology, research and development. Like, guys, no, it's about your mindset.
No. Yeah, everybody, whether it's personal or professional, I will share with you, can use the innovative idea, innovative mindset. If an organization wants to stay in business, and yes, I mean this, if you want to stay in business, you had better embrace innovation, because eventually, if you don't, if you continue with the stagnated, popular thinking models, oh, this is the way we've always done it, you will become outdated and obsolete. You have to embrace creative thinking. And the larger the organization, I will share with you, the harder that sometimes becomes. So to answer Stephen's question, he asked about a publication that I recommend reading. Well, actually, this doesn't have the word innovation anywhere in the title, but it has one key element. It's how to think differently. Now, shockingly enough, to some of you that know me well, perhaps that might be on the line, this author is John C. Maxwell. So again, that's John C. Maxwell. And the book is called How Successful People Think. So again, the title is How Successful People Think. And it's by John C. Maxwell. It's a very small book. It's a great little book. It's actually so small you can practically fit it in your pocket. It's an excellent book to have with you when you're traveling on a plane or a train if you're overseas. So I recommend that taking this and taking a look at it, because it challenges popular thinking models. It challenges you to stretch yourself. So I highly recommend that book.
I'm addicted to him. He has such a book. So, but because we have time, I would be actually trying something new. We don't usually open calls to attendees, but I would like to open it just to make sure that it's covering. So we have Stephen. Stephen, do you have any other information needed here?
I do not.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Again, just for recording purposes, we do mute everybody. I don't want to sound like too rude, but because it's being recorded, but I would like to open to the people who are asking questions and make it a two-way thing. So the next question would be from Kamaljit, which she or he are going to tell me how it's pronounced. Sorry about that. How do you get the leader, and that's a good question, to see him and herself in the mirror, I would say, but she's saying in how their behavior affects the culture. So the self-awareness key there.
That is a very, very good question. I'll be perfectly honest with you.
I'll bring
from
a mirror.
Leadership development. Yeah, I'll be perfectly honest with you from the leadership development, as a leadership development coach. If someone is not open to being self-aware, you cannot make them. You just can't. I wish there was a magic wand you could wave and say, oh, hey, you need to be self-aware. It doesn't work that way. We cannot change other people. This is something that will help you both professionally and personally to find sanity, because one of the mistakes we make as individuals is thinking we can change others. You just simply can't. You can influence other people. And the way to do that, to influence other people, and whether they be your leader or your manager, if you will. If a leader is not self-aware, they're probably not a leader. No offense, but they're probably a boss. They're probably not a leader. Leadership terms and titles are widely distributed inappropriately. So if they're not self-aware, what you could do is share your self-awareness journey with them if you feel comfortable doing that. And by modeling the behavior, you will then encourage them, perhaps, again, we don't have control over that, but you may encourage them or influence them to take a look at themselves. you know, it's interesting because most professionals spend more time planning their vacation than their professional and personal development and career. And that's truth. So it's not common necessarily that you'll find individuals that are interested in developing themselves. I mean, take for example, my husband, bless his heart,
he's not
he's a
listening
PhD
in today.
I know he's not listening in today. Thank goodness, even if he was. So he's a PhD engineer. Why should he possibly need to develop anything? He's got a PhD. Well, he's finally. At his age, and I won't share that, I'm being kind, at his age, he's finally embraced that he does need to develop. And this is wonderful. I'm like, oh, good. He's going to take continuous improvement classes. But again, it's all about modeling the behavior. And you may not see the change right away, okay? You will probably take time because people need to process. And they need to see that it works for you. But if you model that behavior, you will oftentimes influence other people by just being who you are.
And it reminds me, I think ASQ, one of the divisions of American Society for Quality, had a webinar talking about how to give feedback. And she did mention what you mentioned, like you can change somebody. Another thing that would be interesting to try out is just talk about how that behavior influences you or it impacts you on a feeling perspective. How do you feel about your leaders, parenthesis, leaders' behavior is impacting you by saying what happened yesterday, not like what you did to me yesterday, but what happened yesterday made me feel this and this and this way, or how we can prevent this. Or sometimes I even tell my friends, like, fake it, go and say, hey, I would like to improve myself, or did I do anything wrong? So if you ask for help, I think people are more willing to help, and that way they would somehow understand, hopefully. But as you mentioned, also it does matter that they are open towards it as well.
Right. Yeah, I would be very cautious when going to a leader and then saying their behavior made you feel a certain way, unless you know that person is going to be open to that. Okay. Again, if that person is someone you don't feel will take that kind of feedback well, then you might want to be a little bit more roundabout. You know, as they say, politically correct or vague.
I think you're right in that, because with me it's a bit different, because the way I build a relationship with any boss I had, it's like being my friend. And it might have been hard at the beginning, but I do enforce that. So to me, it doesn't matter who you are. You're a CEO, you are whatever. To me, you're a person, and everybody is giving something at this workplace. But I didn't find difficulties, even though I do see many people in workplace or in other organizations, they complain. But I think if you approach the person as a person, we're just people here, let's find a way. I don't think that it's so impossible. I think we have to be courageous in the beginning to go out there and then be ourselves. And I do want to include, I can't unmute Camille, but if you have further questions, please send that to me. And another question I have here is from Luz Maria, and that's what can be an alternative for typical brainstorming sessions for large teams? Of course, there is people who have to use those. And how can an organization move to other ways of idea generation? Especially with the virtual, actually, I work in virtual teams all the time, and big teams she's mentioning.
Yeah, death by committee. I tell you what, large teams do not work well, because inevitably you're going to lose 50% of individuals. So if you have more than 5 people, 3 to 4 is the sweet spot, if you will. More than 5 people, probably that 5th person, 6th person, and so on. Day 1 won't be as engaged. So they're showing up to the meetings to check the box. Okay, and maybe occasionally they might do an action item, but they're not going to be as engaged. So how can you get around this? Well, during my facilitations, oftentimes I would need to touch base with large groups of people, so an entire department, if you will. And one of the things that do not do is call a meeting with the entire department and try to get them to share ideas. That never works. Never works. Maybe rarely if the entire department is 3 or 4 people. Okay. But if it's not,
do we make them write down, or what do you do?
No. Meet with them individually. Meet with them individually. Set up times to meet with individuals, and that way it's a one-on-one. They're more comfortable. You're creating a safe environment for them to share, and they will open up. So be cautious, because you may get more information than you wanted. Okay, but it's a good way to handle needing to touch base with a large volume of people. And does it take more time for you? Perhaps, but I'll tell you something. You'll get a lot more engagement, you'll get a lot more information, and you'll get a lot further. And you develop a lot more credibility and trust with individuals, right? And when you're doing that too, when you go the next step, say this is a process you're trying to improve, probably this is very early on that you have to meet with all these people. So you do that first, and then you can understand, you know what, I think John, Sally, and May here, I think these 3 people are really who I need to keep in touch with for the rest of this. And then you can touch base with the key stakeholders or the managers who you are reporting back to through this innovative process, and say, you know what, I think these 3 people are really our go-to people, and get their buy-in, because obviously you don't want to just, run off and go down the left path and everybody's expecting to go right. So that's a good way to handle volume. Now, if you have to sit and do a large committee, just know that you're going to have some people that are not engaged.
It's a trade-off. Sometimes we have to choose our battles.
Yeah.
We do have another question, which brings us to what we were talking before, a webinar as well as some future webinar we would like to host about neuroscience here. So Guru is asking again about, is there any plan to leverage neuroscience research for development and leadership in our division? Now, I don't know what the division is referring to, but I do know that neuroscience has been out there and is being used in terms of connection with leadership. What's your knowledge or feedback on that?
When you talk about neuroscience, I think of the research that's being done to understand behaviors, characteristics, situational personalities, and source and foundational personalities. So what's commonly known as introvert, extrovert, and what we now know as ambivert, which is neither introvert nor extrovert, and understanding how those individuals behave, what their stress indicators are, et cetera, et cetera. So that there's quite a bit of research coming out now, and it's fairly revolutionary. I'm really hooked on this topic right now. As a matter of fact, I just finished reading the book Quiet by Susan Cain, which is the power of introverts in the world that can't stop talking. Cain, C-A-I-N, and the book is called Quiet.
She talks about the power of an introvert, right?
Yeah, the power of introverts in a world that can't stop talking, which would be me. But actually, I'm an ambivert. I'm an ambivert, so I'm neither introverted nor extroverted, but I can talk.
Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, Susan Cain is excellent. Oh, the ambivert. So an ambivert is a person who's neither extroverted nor introverted. We're very centered on the scale, so it's a sliding scale, right? Some people are deep introverts, some people are slightly introverted, and vice versa. So, and I will share with you too that our society tends to put a negative label on introversion, which is extremely incorrect. Particularly with the new science and study or research that's coming out right now, it indicates that introverts are, interestingly enough, a huge contributor to innovative environment. Now, I didn't go there during our webinar because I could go down a rabbit trail very quickly there, but interestingly enough, leadership. Now, our most successful leaders are often introverts, not extroverts. We as a society worship what Susan Cain has labeled in her book Quiet, the extrovert ideal. And it's unfortunate because, as a matter of fact, as I mentioned earlier during my presentation, the people who talk the most aren't necessarily coming up with the greatest ideas. And oftentimes there's
You're making me feel
involved. No, it's not personal. I talk a lot too, but I also need my quiet time. So an ambivert is someone who is neither one nor the other, and everybody's a little different. So while I can talk quite a bit, and I love speaking in front of groups, I do need to schedule time to recharge. So I have the abilities, but it's a balance. So ambiverts, actually, there was, so Susan Cain has also founded the Quiet Revolution, and they're doing, they have some great articles on personalities and how they play in the workplace and for our personal lives as well. And one was recently published about ambiverts. And it helped. And I, of course, was like, oh, well, let me read this. You know, I need to know more about myself because this is a fairly recent revolution for me. I didn't know that there was actually such a thing as an ambivert personality. I thought that I used to be introverted and now I'm extroverted. Well, technically that can't happen. That's not possible.
We tend to label ourselves a bit too much in the society, in my opinion, because we're both so many extrovert people here. I think we are at 8 o'clock, so I want to wrap it up and thank you for our great presentation tonight and giving your feedback as well as experience and professional coaching you'd had in such a topic. And I would also like to thank everybody who raised questions. And today's presentation and recording of the webinar will be posted on our website and the YouTube channel. The information on where, you'll receive the information on the email, but you do have where to find us on the chat box as well. Our next webinar will be on March 27. Another career and professional coach, Miss Ashley Paresh, is based in Boston, will help us understand a bit more about how do we negotiate and take our careers to the next level. So getting out, so I think this tonight, innovation ideas and be so safe into being ourselves, I think that's gonna be a good link to that webinar as well. Registration for that is already on our website. You can go there and register for the upcoming webinar. We do want to let you know that if you want future automatic notifications about the webinar, so you can follow our LinkedIn page as well as you can sign up to get our newsletter on the website. There is a quick survey. It's less than a minute, really. It will pop up in your screen when you close the webinar. If you're attending through via call, you'll receive an email which will have future webinar details as well as the survey. We really appreciate you doing that because that way we shape future webinars and we make changes about day, time, the quality of the presentation, the topics you need. So it's very important that you fill that out. If you need to receive the credit for certification, for those who attended at least 40 minutes, we'll be sending a separate email, so not the follow-up email, by tomorrow. And you can keep that email, you can save it as a PDF, and then when you go to ASU, wherever you're going for a certification to claim your credit, you can use that as a proof. Again, I thank you everybody for the appreciation and the organizers that helped us tonight and Kieran as well. And have a good night and hope to see you next webinar. Thank you.